Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, I'm John Sonica, the stress manager here at mHealthy of our new program, mHealthy Thrive, which will be rolling out soon. And I'm with Bethany. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Bethany Lem. I'm one of the health educators in the alcohol management program here under mHealthy.
And this is our series, I Want to Be Healthy, but It's So Hard. It's a title that I like. Last week, Brent and Bridget talked about willpower, or the word willpower, because we don't like to talk about it, we like to talk about words. So this week we're going to talk about getting started and keeping it up for the long haul. We're going to talk about motivation, several types of motivation, something that often gets brought up. We're constantly saying, oh, people need to get motivated. So we're just curious, what does the word motivation mean to you? Take a moment and think. What does it mean to you, Bethany?
For me, it means the why or the driving force behind me doing a certain behavior.
And I always think to myself, people say, am I motivated? And I say, to do what? And I always have to say, well, I'm motivated for some things and not for others. So when I think of motivation, I think of something that I find pleasurable. It's almost, to me, motivation means pleasure. But that's me. So it's always interesting to think to yourself, what does it mean? So the dictionary definition, of which there are many, is the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. So we're just trying to clarify the reasons that you might want to engage in healthy behavior, or any behavior. So it's really important to take the time to think about motivation. Often we're focused on education, which is we're telling you what to eat, we're telling you how to exercise, telling you how to reduce your stress. I'm going to tell you to breathe and do meditation and, get organized, or any facet of coping behaviors. That's education, and then we talk about skill building. But we do have to talk about motivation, because information we know is not enough to engage in a behavior. So why do we want to act or behave in a particular way? So the outline of our little talk today is knowing yourself. Know your values and strengths. I think that's probably the most important part of this talk. Intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, finding what rewards you like and work for you, making a plan, setting smart goals, and then social support, enlisting others in your plan. So we will go through that in our brief half hour today, and hopefully you'll find something useful. So let's talk about health. Since we're at mHealthy, broad definition, we're not M-disease, we're mHealthy. Where does health fit in your life?
And sometimes I don't think health is motivator. For me, it might motivate me for certain behaviors, but not for others.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, I sit here and I'm at mHealthy with Bethany here, or sitting in my messy office here at Wolverine Tower. I don't think about health that often. Going through my day-to-day existence, and I'm in an environment where we should, I'm thinking about a lot of other things, and I have to think, well, where does it really fit in my life, in my priorities? How important is health to you when compared to everything else I value? I was talking with Bethany beforehand. We're talking about children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, my kids are a more motivating factor than my health, at least at this phase in my life.
I'm going to open up a little poll here to have us do. What are your most important values? It should turn up on your screen. Poll is open. What's your most important value? We're just, we all have different values. We want to think about ourselves. I have good relationships, being a good spouse, parent. We were talking about kids, being strong, confident, successful, being responsible, having good reputation, having love, happiness, enjoyment in your life, or spirituality in religion, a sense of transcendence. I'll leave that open for a minute, and We'll see what people say and what's the most important one of those. There are many other values. We could only fit 5 on the poll.
We know there's a plethora out there.
I'll leave it open for one more second. Most of us have voted.
When I think values, just to make a point too, values can change throughout your life.
That's very much so.
What I valued in my 20s is vastly different than what I'm valuing in my 40s.
And we can have all of these values, but we have to think about them. So thank you much. I'm going to close the poll in a second. And I should be able to share that with you. I'm sharing the poll. You should be able to see it on your screen. That when I look now, we have a nice variation. The majority of us said having love, happiness, and enjoyment in our lives. Then a good quarter of us said having good relationships, being a good spouse, a good parent, a good community member, a good coworker. But we had people in all categories, being responsible, having good reputation, strong, confident, successful. Just shows we have a wide array of values in the population. Every category had a response, and had I put up more, there would have been somebody in every single category. So it is important to think about what you value, and you notice that health wasn't on here. That where would health fit in among all of those activities? So look here, I'm going to hide that poll now. That we have, values. We think about the long haul. This is motivation. Of all these lists that you start out, and when Bethany works, with alcohol.
It's one of the first things we look at is connecting, reducing our alcohol use or stopping altogether. How's that connecting me closer to my values, to the core things that move me?
That one of the reasons we're doing this first, and the title of this, is that you have to take time to think about your values in terms of long-term motivation. And as Bethany says, the first thing she does, it's often one of the things we do with stress management. I have to know what I value to start getting motivated. And there are lots of things, including being attractive, which we didn't have on there, which is often why people might exercise. That's all the commercials on TV playing on that. We're not exercising for losing weight or vice versa. So I'm going to put up another poll, just a little bit different. I'm going to talk about, should see it on your screen now, what's your character strength? Little bit different from values, because sometimes we value something, but we're not very good at it. We talked about that. I want to get better at it. We talk about having something I value. They're very similar to values. Character strengths, we often value our strengths, but it also has a component of competence. I'm good at that. We talked about, something is wisdom and knowledge, courage, humanity, justice, transcendence. There are other character strengths that we build upon. Some strength that you have, your cognitive ability, your emotional ability, emotional intelligence, Bethany brought up. We might value social relationships, but not be as adept as we hope to be.
That doesn't mean we can't gain those strengths or strengthen, those connections.
Yeah, this is, it's interesting because there's subcategories of these. Like you do value how something is kindness. I know my wife was here. We always talk about her. She's a very kind-hearted person and values kindness, but knows she's from Brooklyn and knows that she has to work on it a little bit. So she values, this is a skill you start to develop. I wish I could develop this a little bit, and some of it is sort of relevant. So it's just another way of knowing your strengths. So I'm going to close that one and share that with you. And we see, once again, we have variation, but it's a very nice group. We have a lot of wisdom and knowledge, value as the strength. A lot of folks, it makes sense, we're at a university, that a lot of cognitive strengths to build upon, a lot of things we already have in place. But knowing that, and then a lot of humanity. It's very kind-hearted people, here as well. But we want to work with these in developing our plans in motivation. So those two exercises that we talked about, knowing your values and knowing your character strengths, are the first part of motivation for the long haul.
And I think it's okay if it's not something that comes immediately to you. You know, thinking about what we do value and what our character strengths are takes time.
Yeah, there are a lot of measures that people do. I encourage us, as Bethany said, say we change over time. But to have this reflection, I like to write down what I value occasionally. When we talk about changing behavior for health behavior, this is the first activity I do to get motivated. Because remember, what did I say about motivation?
You have to enjoy it.
You have to
it has
enjoy
to be
it. Pleasurable. Something I value, something I like, and if I'm really trying to tie into that, because otherwise I know it is not going to be lasting. And we want to be in for the long haul here and figure out ways to change our behavior for the long haul. So here's the character strengths that we've talked about. Thank you for doing that. Talking about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So we're going to talk a little bit academically here. We have both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, which intrinsic is a little bit about what we were talking about, the things you value, motivation based on pleasure in an activity rather than an external reward. You know, Bethany, I know, values being a good parent.
Absolutely.
Saying about that. And extrinsic, motivation based on external rewards, kind of like when you get $50 for doing your M Healthy HRA or for participating in M Healthy. They have its place. We do that.
We probably wouldn't work unless we didn't get a paycheck.
Right. Well, hopefully you find a job where you would work that has some intrinsic value to you, but they play both ways. So I'm going to try another poll here. Since I'm enjoying the polls, you're doing a great job. Are you mainly motivated intrinsically or extrinsically, both or neither? If you can just take a moment. I always find this an interesting exercise to do. Where does your motivation come from? It is all legitimate. I'm going to leave it open for another second. I like to think about this myself. Where
I think it's nice to have balance between the two as well.
Yeah.
You know, I need a little bit of both.
I'm going to close this poll and share that with you. You should see it now, which is most of the people said what you said, Bethany. You have a little bit of both. But we had a few people say extrinsically, and a strong chunk say intrinsically, which is interesting, and some said neither, which is sometimes,
That's okay.
Sometimes I think the neither speaks to finding what motivates us. Sometimes it's very difficult. Otherwise, that's why the title of this, it is very hard. Even when we know our values, when we know our intrinsic. But I did like looking at that distribution that you put up there, because we have, largely intrinsic has to be there. That you told us, if, there's a small folks who mainly extrinsically, but most of you said both or intrinsically solely.
And that makes me think of, a physician who says, okay, quit smoking. Well, if I'm not intrinsically motivated to do that, it's probably not going to go anywhere.
Right.
It's not connected. Just them telling me that. It might.
It might.
But it might have to be something else to have that lasting effect.
Yeah, which is what we're after. So it's very nice to see this extrinsic. It makes us think about what we do for health as well. Mm-hmm. If I'm doing health to get my reward, my $50, and we had some very nice flyers here in I'm Healthy that encourage us to think of our different rewards, our non-financial rewards, which is intrinsic motivation. Mm-hmm. Because we know here that that's the way that you change behavior. That if we are too dependent upon that external reward, when that reward goes away, if it's extrinsic,
so does our behavior.
So does our behavior, which happens sometimes if I'm not getting the praise. We also like to talk about, let me hide that, the immediate versus delayed rewards, which is very important. Thinking about what motivates you, that's immediately apparent, versus the long term. They bring this up a lot in health, and I think it is important to think about, because we have both the intrinsic, extrinsic dimension, and immediate. If I'm going to give you praise right now, thank you for coming, that's immediate, has a little bit more motivation as opposed to something delayed. Do you want $50 now or $100 2 years from now?
Well, and for me, I'm thinking I just started running, and when I do run, I immediately feel good about myself. I have a little bit more energy. I feel like I've done something, but I'm not seeing, any weight loss that day, or I'm not seeing any toned muscles that day. It's going to take a little bit of time, so that's my delayed reward or gratification. So it's the immediate rewards that gets me to do it again that week.
Yeah, and I think that's great, and let's think about that for a second. Often our health goals are exceedingly delayed. I'm going to be healthy years from now, or it takes a while to get toned or lose weight or to see that difference, but we do like to see immediate responses on something we value, and that's where, you can have an intrinsically motivated thing be immediately. Say we were talking if Bethany went for a run, what would be an immediate reward for her?
Yeah, for me is that I go home and I feel like I'm a good role model for my children who are now watching me exercise, as well as I really truthfully like the energy I get afterwards. So I feel like, oh, I can do more tonight.
And there are two things there. One is, I think, extrinsic. You do get energy sometimes, so that is an immediate extrinsic. But there was immediate intrinsic. I feel I'm a good role model that you have. So if you value being a good parent, or some of you value being very confident, you do get a sense of achievement. I didn't lose any weight. Well, I finished my workout. I ate well. There's an immediate response to finding an immediate intrinsic reward. So we do want to eventually there's always a mix of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and a mix of immediate and delayed. And you want to find a pattern that works for you. And sometimes you can look and say, well, as I did, I really value something intrinsic, being a good parent. How can I build that into my health behaviors? Because I've already said I don't think about health very much, and I'm damn healthy, so I have to find a way to incorporate health might serve my goal of being a good parent.
Or therefore, hey, I'm going to be around for a long time now.
Yes, having a lengthy time to keep it going forward. So.
Well, I just want to touch on rewards as well. Sometimes as adults, for extrinsic rewards, we don't often think about things that we enjoy. Or sometimes it's food, or it's alcohol, or it's the tobacco. And so oftentimes those are our rewards. And if we're working to change that, we might have to give some thought as to what's going to replace those rewards.
Very much so. When we think about behaviors, and in many situations we're trying to reduce a behavior that's unwanted and increase something that we want to do. Those are two different things. And you might respond to different parts of your values, and one might take a little bit more extrinsic reward. You might try and reduce your, I'm quitting smoking by paying myself. I'm going to get more money by quitting smoking.
Right. I'm going to put this money in the jar, and I'll get something at the end of it.
Whereas not smoking might be tied to an intrinsically motivated. I feel really good when I don't smoke because I'm a good role model. I value being a parent, or I value being confident, or I value being kind. What you have there. So let's move to the final phase where you've got an idea of your values and what motivates you. As we've thought, we're going through this very quickly. It's really useful to think for quite a while about what motivates you and your rewards, but then you want to take those and set goals that reflect your values and strengths that tie in. So if we can figure out, because everybody is individual, way to tie in your values to your health goals, and use a combination of both intrinsic and extrinsic to make your plan. We do lots of little things for rewarding ourselves extrinsically, giving ourselves a reward, little pieces of candy sometimes, structuring our environment, but we want it to be lasting. And so we do have to find a way. If it's not serving some of your values and character strengths, as you identified, if it's not serving those, it's unlikely to be maintained for the long haul. And this is what we're after. I'm sure all of you, if you're anything like me, I've had short-term change.
Oh,
and it comes and goes, and I go back and reflect. And
I think of Lent.
Yeah, that's good.
Oftentimes it's short-term change.
We're getting on Lent. We're talking about setting goals, so we often choose something at Lent where we're trying to give up something that is valuable, and sometimes we're a little shy on our goals. We choose something maintainable. So we'll talk about setting SMART goals. How many of you are familiar with SMART goals? I don't know if they have a raise of hands, but look at the dashboard. If you're familiar with SMART goals, it's something we often said.
Yeah.
I got some hands raised.
Probably from Unhealthy. You've heard of the phrase before.
Yeah. So I'm going to do one more poll here. Bethany, you want to go through what the SMART goals are?
SMART goals should be specific. So not real general, but really get down to more details about the goal. Measurable. That's important. If it's not measurable, you don't know if there's going to be any change. Definitely attainable. You want it to be challenging, but you want to be able to reach that goal as well. And definitely realistic. For me, it's unrealistic for me to say I'm going to run every single day. It's more realistic for me to say I'm going to run 3 days. It's still challenging, but it's more realistic. And definitely time-based. So a goal is going to have more of a deadline. With it, if it's going to be within 2 weeks or the summer, there's going to be a deadline. It's not going to have empty or no end, basically.
So I'm going to launch a poll now. I'm just curious if you had to take a moment. What aspect of setting these goals would be most difficult for you? Is it being specific, making it measurable, making it attainable? Is it the time? I have a hard time writing time-based things. Because these are a good way to write goals that help us tie in with our values and make them important in our lives and motivate us.
And I think it's okay to tweak goals as you go. Maybe it was a bit unrealistic. So okay, let's look at it again and tweak them. It's okay. It's a work in progress, I think.
So I'm going to leave this open for another second. And I'm closing now. And I'm sharing it with you. And once again, this has been a very good polling webinar because lots of variation, which is this
shows us we are individuals.
This shows us, and if you take anything from this webinar, we are individuals. That's why the title says it's hard. If we had a pat answer, we would distribute it that way. We're trying to get into motivation. So we have the variation. Most of them said that being attainable is very hard to write an attainable goal, which is actually I do that on, we talked about Lent. Sometimes I set goals, and I've seen us do that in many situations here in the work environment, when we set goals that we've already done, that because we're worried about that attainable component.
And the attainable might be that we have to work on a skill, in order for us to actually reach that goal.
And then the second one is time-based. It's hard to write time-based. So, we do have, let's practice thinking about SMART goals. So let Bethany read that one.
Sure. And again, I think we often think, oh, well, I want to lose weight, or I want to eat healthy. Well, those are great general goals. But when we're thinking about actual making behavior change, then we have to be have our more narrow scope. And so losing a little weight might then be, I want to lose 5 pounds by the end of summer. And then how I might do that could be that I'm going to reduce my caloric intake by 150 and or ride my bike 2 miles 4 days a week. We are also talking that that's actually a couple goals within a goal. So for some individuals, that might work. For other individuals, it might be, you know what, let me break it down and just do one of those. Maybe I'll reduce my caloric intake, or maybe I'll ride my bike 2 miles, because those are definitely different behavior changes too.
Yeah, and I encourage, even writing smart goals, we can talk about other things that you think are important to losing 5 pounds. Mood, friendships, different types of things you might value, incorporating, so you can take your time. And this, once again, is not easy. You know, if I write my SMART goals too quickly, I don't do them well. So it's a whole process of thinking through your values, your motivation, then thinking through your SMART goals. Then we want to track.
Absolutely. Tracking is important. And it's okay to, you know, I hate to use the term failure. It's okay to not meet your goal. That gives you a chance to learn from that. And that tracking gives you information.
Yeah. That you do have that sense when you track. This is the measurable component, but it's not only measurable, it gives us insight into what's obtainable. So we're constantly tweaking that goals, and I like the variation we had in writing goals. They're hard to write. That wasn't long enough, the time base was too short, but one of the ways we do this, I like to track my stress. Once a day I tell myself, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no stress, 10 being I'm freaked out, that where am I? Usually I do this at the end of the day, you know, around dinner time, and I keep track. And if I have a state of things in a row, sometimes that gives me insight into what's going on in my environment, and then I start tracking something else. I start tracking, who am I with?
That's exactly what, in the alcohol management program, if a person's tracking their drinking, sometimes they'll also track their stress level or their sleep, you know, quality, just to kind of see correlations and to see if they're impacted by each other.
So we want to finish out along those lines. The last thing that you might add is support for your goals. When you've thought about your values, your character strengths, your rewards, intrinsic, delayed, written a goal, you try to seek support for those goals, both in your environment but also in your social community. What else might you need? I like to tell people around me so that they're working with me.
It might mean I have a conversation with my partner, or it might mean I need to learn how to use my exercise equipment I have at home.
Yeah, and that is one of the ways that we make our goals actionable. I like to bring this up, though, because a lot of you value relationships. It was right there. And so this is really important. Sometimes I write this right into my goals. Having a friend, my goal is to tell somebody that I'm going to eat well every day. That doesn't mean that I eat well. Notice that. I just tell them I'm trying to eat well, because that's my first goal. Because actually, you can probably tell I'm very verbal. I like to talk, so I do a lot of talking, and I value it. So it is important to enlist your family members, your friends, everybody in terms of support. Also, when to be left alone.
What type of support you want from them.
What type of support. So we're going to finish up. We'll take any questions if you have. It's been a great one. Next week, it kind of relates to this. We're talking about procrastination, and that leads into social support and other things, and coming back, because now we've got you motivated. You're going to think about your goals this week, and you'll get to the place I often get to. I'm very thoughtful. I've made some good SMART goals. I'm motivated, and I have to think, well, what's next?
I'll start it Monday.
I'll start it Monday, and we want to get going. And sometimes that's where the extrinsic rewards come in. So we have one question. Somebody asks, what do I do if I'm mainly extrinsically motivated? I don't really have extrinsic. I think that's knowing yourself. That's setting up rewards for yourself externally.
And I think sometimes, too, having that external motivation, sometimes, not always, you'll get internal motivation along the way. At least, you know, and I'm speaking to alcohol because that's my background, but sometimes, okay, I'll put the money I'm saving in a jar, you know, from not buying alcohol. Well, gosh, along the way, I notice I'm getting energy, and I notice I'm feeling better about myself, and I'm feel like I'm more actively engaged with my kids. Well, that's now an internal, intrinsic motivation. So sometimes that comes along naturally.
Yeah, and I think that's important because we talk about intrinsic for the long haul, but we'll move to procrastination next week. I always set up, part of the reasons mHealthy gives you a reward, it gets a foot in the door. It's for a small initial behavior. I need to have both. That's one of the things I like. I do like people to smile and give me praise. Mm-hmm. And I need to have a little bit of that friendly smile to get me in the door for my behavior, and then to make it last, I have to tie it to my values. So we'll emphasize trying to come up with a combination of both intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So
and it takes time.
It takes time, but it's a process. So we'll give a brief review, take some time to know your values and your strengths. We'll do some classes on that. Understand what motivates you immediately and what's delayed, so you've thought about it and where you might need some different rewards. Figure out how to write good, smart goals that are just for you, that take some tweaking and you can redo. Practice some tracking, and then we're moving on to enlisting some support. And that's all we have time for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
For spending your lunch with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.